Welcome back, folks, to another episode of Fire Theft Radio, episode 129. We're moving up the ranks, moving up the amount of episodes, and I'm just happy to bring you, and you guys already know, it's in the title, it's no surprise. Sam Swanson is here with me today, and we're going to talk about a lot of good stuff. But before we get started, I always forget to do this stuff in the beginning, which I always say I'm going to do, and then I forget. But I'm by myself today, so I'm a little bit more focused. Mav's not here today. Unfortunately, he's real busy with work, as we usually are. Me and him are pretty busy dudes, so we try to knock it out anytime we can. That being said, go visit the website, firetheftradio.com. Interact with other listeners over there. You can leave comments, and we can, I'm over there moderating all those comments and stuff. So if it's too rude or if it's some dumb link or whatever, I'll probably erase it. But if it's actually worthy of reading, you can interact with other people over there at firetheftradio.com on the website and listen. Click on the episodes, and you can kind of see where people have commented on certain things and go from there. So you can interact with other listeners. It's really fun stuff. Other than that, you can catch us anywhere, any podcatcher. But today we're going to have Sam Swanson talk about his newly released album, Escape Babylon. And we kind of are actually doing a part 2 of something we did a long time ago, which was an episode that actually was very, emotionally, I think cathartic is the word, for me at least. I actually got to know Sam a little bit better there. We since then not stopped talking every now and then on the phone, and it's been a very interesting friendship. Finally meeting him in person too, which was really cool. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff happening. In that episode, it was way back when, 4 years ago, in September of 2019. That episode was called Love Against the Machine. That's right, not Rage, but Love Against the Machine. And this is Volume 2, 4 years later, Part 2. Here we go. Hello, folks. Welcome back, and let's get right to the nitty-gritty, as Nacho Libre would say. Sam, are you there? Are you there, Sam?
I am here. I hear you.
Uh-oh.
Thank you for having me, buddy.
All right, we lost you there for a minute. I don't know, internet situation. I'm not sure what's going on, but Sam, are you there? Can you hear me now?
Hey, Chuck. I can hear you now. I could actually not hear you because you were muted before, and then you cloned yourself. But I'm glad that you're here now.
Yeah, I'm
glad that one of you is here now.
Yeah,
and I wasn't as cool as to be able to clone myself, but did bring a friend over. He just kind of teleported from across the pond here. My friend Andy Jennings from the band Dissonant Prophet is joining me. Say what's up, Andy.
Doing okay. That jump room needs a bit of oil, bit of WD-40.
Well, Andy, nice to finally see you, meet you. Just so you know, I have been already using Dissident Prophet music on Fire Theft Radio for a few years now. So, yeah, man. So, in case in the future you hear hey, man, these guys didn't even ask me, but I was just doing it, Sam, like I said, it's been 4 years since we did a show called Love Against the Machine, and we got to know each other pretty well. People were listening, and actually people emailed me, and they were like, you know what? I felt like I really got to know both Chuck and Sam on a deeper level, and I didn't even know they were listening to us, I guess, in that sense. Or both of us, that those people knew both of us, and then they found it interesting that we just opened up and talked about our life experiences and things like that we were going through at the time. And that kind of led to a nice friendship that we got. We've been having conversations ever since, and it was a pleasure to meet you when you came over to the good old SoCal. And So I mean, it was awesome. It was a great time. So I'm glad to have you back over here and continue this volume 2 on that episode 4 years later.
Yeah, it was nice to go to the record store with you. One of my favorite things to do.
Oh yeah, I took you to our famous Rhino Records over here. It's famous in this area. So it was a cool little shop. It looks like you enjoyed yourself. I was like, where do I take a musician? I mean, I'm like, I'm not gonna take him to like something, I don't know, lame. But anyways, so other than that, I'm glad that you are done with your album, Escape Babylon. I believe
Yes.
at the time you were barely like working on some stuff. I mean, you had been working on this for how long now?
Oh my gosh. It's really tough to say because as far as I'm concerned, I kind of gave up music when I moved to New York in 2011, and I just focused on a career and a family and all this stuff. But during that time is when I went through that God's Property Radio thing, as we talked about, and it all kind of flooded back in. Music just started coming in as I interviewed people, and a lot of the content that made the songs is from those experiences. So it's interesting how that kind of came full circle in a different way, like when I decided to kind of put more of a purpose behind the music instead of just write about just plain emotion or just create to create for the sake of creating, which is not a bad thing. But as far as to answer the question though, I guess the first song I wrote would have been Yeshua, which you played on that episode. I think it was an acoustic version, and now I have a full band version that we just filmed the video with my buddy Andy back here on the guitar a few days ago. So that'll come out next year sometime, hopefully earlier in the year. But yeah, 2013 I think is when, 2012 or 2013. It might have been 2012 when Yeshua came to me, the chorus and everything, and that's when everything kind of started, like 2012.
Well, let me go back a little bit. Let's track back, and just in case people don't know your music and don't know what you do. I mean, you've done music over there at Canary Cry Radio. You've done stuff, even for our show and things like that. Little bits of things. But album is called Escape Babylon, and let's just assume the listener doesn't know what the heck that's about. So let's go back a little bit and say, hey man, this is the album, the album name. What Babylon are we escaping here? What's going on with that?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it really stems back to around the time, I think it was about 2015 when I was ending God's Property Radio. It took my buddy Andy here on board, and he started a podcast called The Not So Distant Future, and there were some other podcasts that were basically broadcasting through God's Property Radio when we were part of RRN. And in addition to that, I started an arts-based podcast called Hallelujah, which was only about 12 episodes long until I had to kind of hang everything up permanently. But there was a gentleman on my show who was an artist named Nick Abraham, and he was one of those guys that's just so what's the word I'm looking for? Prolific, and always creating, always just on the move. And he had this image, which I'll have to find it for you because it's a really cool image. But he had a picture that he had made of a sword, like just stabbing through a pyramid, and it said "Escape Babylon," and it was just so jarring to me. I felt like that is the perfect album title for all the songs that I'm writing right now. And I, of course, asked Nick for his blessing, and I always try to tell the story when people ask where it comes from. However, to me, what the meaning is to me isn't necessarily in the biblical context of the geographic location of Babylon or anything like that. To me, what it's become is to me, Babylon represents slavery. And to not be enslaved requires you to escape the mindset of a slave. And to me, Babylon starts in your mind. Right. And you need to free your mind and adapt the mind of Christ. So that is my ultimate message of this record.
Okay, yeah, I mean that's a great message. I mean, I think in our personal conversations, we kind of have I kind of have an idea of where you want to go with a lot of the music that you're doing because we're well aware that a lot of us are kind of stuck in this world that we, especially here in America, kind of this peak capitalism that we have, right? This kind of decadence, that we live in here, and we're just complaining about the darndest things, and really our life isn't that bad at all here, and it's just one of those things, but it's because you're in this system, you live in this matrix, right? You live in this ideological matrix, and it's just in so many ways it's hard to escape because I myself am aware of the things I need to do in order to disconnect, and it's definitely something I want to do as far as my finances, because that's all part of it, right? This Babylon system, and that and many other things are kind of like just layered together, and we're all in it. And I think it's a great idea to at least have the mind of let's escape it, let's escape it. And so that being said, I mean, writing your music, that's the thought process there. How did you, or how are you, what steps are you taking to escape Babylon exactly? Like what have you done? I know you've had an interesting journey. So I want people to kind of know that you're a pretty serious guy when it comes to saying this. You're not just saying it, you're living it out. And so I want people to know what you're doing.
Well, yeah, I guess first off, let's start with the album. And there's an image on the front.
Mm-hmm.
So for the listeners, if you go check out, go on Spotify. Do me a favor right now. Go on Spotify or whatever digital streaming platform you can, and go there and find Escape Babylon, the album, and you'll see there's this image, and it has what looks to be an elephant on the front in flames. Also, half of his body is submerged in water. But what they don't see in this album cover is that underneath the elephant, it's very hard to see. You really have to look very closely, but there's a donkey. And the donkey is representative of, well, it's just the dichotomy, right, of the political, situation here in this country.
Mm-hmm.
You have the blue water, the blue team, and this donkey carcass is dead underneath this burning elephant on the top. So you're either burning or you're drowning in the system. And then when you turn the album over, unfortunately, you can't do this on Spotify, but if you buy a physical copy, you can get the record on vinyl or CD. And on the back cover, underneath the song titles in the water, are both just bones and remains of the elephant and the donkey together, because the system is based in entropy. So that all being said, what have I done? Because like I said, the Babylon starts in the mind. And I think that, I guess my experience, we talked about this on the Love Against the Machine Part 1 4 years ago, which is just mind-blowing to hear you say that, by the way. For what's happened in 4 years, Chuck? Anything happened in 4 years? So weird.
Biggest transfer of wealth in human history.
Like right after we talked.
Yeah.
I do wonder about that interview. It's cool that we have that snapshot, it's almost like a little journal entry, while I was making the record, before I was mixing it. And I was finished with all the songs, just was finishing up all the tracking and about to mix the record. And, the other part of this album cover that I draw the listener here to is that it's split in half, right? Like there's fire and there's water. And it's just as they're on the record, half of this record is super spiritual. And then half of the record just has to do with life and what I went through in my time since being a podcaster till now, really. And what I've gleaned from it and the growth that I've incurred from it. And so there are songs where I'm screaming at God. There are songs where
Less than a Job, huh?
Yeah. I mean, so I guess in some sense, I think I said this in that first interview. At the time, I was thinking about how, in some ways my marriage was Babylon. So in some ways, the old relationship that I had, just, it was unequally yoked. There were a lot of problems. I think that all things can be fixed, but at the end of the day, God allowed me to escape that for various reasons. And I see now, there's a song on the record called Hindsight 2020. We just released a video for, which is about rising above. And that's about my old career, and about, the chorus to it talks about, I finally figured out what you're all about. I finally figured out what you're all about. Talk is cheap when truth ain't free. I finally figured out what it's all about. A typical triangular scheme. So then there's that double meaning of the pyramid scheme, right? And the triangular scheme between like maybe a love triangle, So it's kind of all encompassing, and it has to do with even more so like my career that I used to work. And a lot of my old career was based on the American dream. And I now think I've sided with Carlin at this point, which is that, his famous quote is, they call it the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe it.
Are you talking about comedian George Carlin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
George Carlin.
Yeah.
I think that our country specifically, I can't speak on behalf of Andy's country or any other countries, but just from my vantage point here, is somebody that kind of feels like I don't participate as much in society as most people, which doesn't make me better or worse or anything. It just is what it is.
No, you're better.
But I think that we are so out of touch with our identity. Like, we don't know what just think about all the stuff that's been happening the last however many years with identity as just in the gender realm, right?
Yeah.
But let alone just, if Chuck, if you don't know who your father is, how can you go to the courthouse and get your inheritance? You know what I'm saying? It's like that. None of us knows where we come from. None of us knows our value, which is extremely precious. We're all kings and queens.
Yeah.
And I think that we've lost touch with it big time. So
what I like that I've seen that you've done, and I'm just putting it out there just because this is what I've seen from you, and it's been inspiring to me, is that you've taken the leap and you've stayed. I mean, even during COVID, you were like, hey man, screw it. I'm doing music online, whatever I got to do. And you're just, really living off, I think, your God-given talent. And then you took it a step further and you're like, yo, I'm not about to get stationed here in this house and wherever it is you were living. And now you're on the road in your house, like on a bus, and
that was, so to catch the listeners up with that, 2020, so 2019 we talked, 2020 happens. I finished mixing the record just after 2020 hit, and then I was mixing and mastering the record as COVID hit. Spent 3 months, trying to do live streams from my house to pay the bills, and then just work whatever odd jobs I could, which was quite humbling and really got me thinking about the future and what else I might want to be doing, honing in on some other skills just as a backup plan maybe. But so 2020 was an interesting one. 2021, I had got into a new apartment, and then the vaccine rolled out as I had moved into this new apartment. And I think it was within about 2 months of, it's just wild, man. Like, I felt that with COVID, I think my drinking ramped up, and I don't mean that in an addictive way. I just had more beers every now and then. I don't feel convicted about it in the sense that I like look down on it. But I mean, I would have like, I'm sitting at home, I'm going to have a Corona. Everybody's talking about coronavirus. Let's do it. But I probably cut loose a little more than I would have. And then when gigs came back in 2021, people would be like, hey, let me get you a drink. And tips had ramped up. Like, I mean, I was doing a lot better, after having probably the worst year as a musician playing cover gigs and stuff. And so I was like, yeah, buy me a beer. Right. But that being said, when I got into my new apartment, I just started, I had to like downsize, and I started throwing away a lot of different things. Um, and then I decided that, I don't know what it is, Chuck, but I just felt that God was telling me without, I say that not in a, like I was getting an audible voice from God, but it just felt like there was this nudging of sorts that I should just stop drinking.
Mm.
And I didn't do it permanently, although I haven't had a drink now for over a year. Um, but that being said, I tried it out. I just thought, let me detox from this for a little bit. And that makes it sound a lot more intense too. Like I said, I didn't drink that much, but
Yeah.
I just felt like I'm going to go cold turkey and see I mean, I honestly, man, the vaccine rolling out really sobered me up too. There was this, it was like, wow, this is getting very real. And there were venues there was a venue specifically that they had booked me long in advance. And I had to basically stand my ground because right before the gig came, they told me, hey, we have a new policy. You need to be vaccinated if you're performing here and show proof of vaccination. And you know me, I ain't all about that jab. I'm not
Right.
about any jab. I mean, I don't
Right.
think I've ever had a flu shot in my life,
Yeah,
you know?
me neither,
So,
yeah.
and my kids have never had a shot in their life. So there you go. But so
Are
I
they
also am
good? Are they
what's that?
good? Because
Are they
everyone,
good?
right? Yeah. Because right away, everyone's like, "Well, are they sick though?" You know, because
Dude,
that's the
my kids are the healthiest kids I know. And
yeah.
granted, I know them better than any other kids, but no, like they're incredibly well behaved kids that can have adult conversations. They're wonderful.
That's good.
And I think that's another thing. I don't want to get too, off track with this, but at the time that we talked in 2019, I had just taken on homeschooling as well. So 2019/2020, 2020 hits, COVID hits, and this is the first 6 to 7 months of us homeschooling, co-parenting while doing it, right? Which is kind of a challenge. But then all the kids come home from school and God's like, hey, see, I blessed you. You stuck to your guns. So fast forward back to 2021, I just knew in my spirit, like I had to be vigilant and speak the truth and let people know, like boldly, but not being mean to you or anything, but just saying, hey, listen, I support your freedom to decide how to run your business, but I cannot support your decision as an individual, nor will I ever want to play here again. Or will I want to come to your establishment, because I've had people lose their jobs over this, and I'm not about to take something that isn't tested fully, you know what I mean?
Right.
Let alone I just don't take vaccines, right? Like this shouldn't even be an issue. Like you shouldn't be wasn't there like a HIPAA law, like
Oh yeah.
on purpose, like people can't know about like what your medical status is. So
Right.
anyhow, that all being said, I'm just kind of painting you a little landscape here of what it was like in 2021, and I felt a little bit stressed out, like, and I just cut drinking entirely, and I went to my friend Jesse Conti's now video studio, but it was not a video studio yet. It was this space above this shop in Auburn, New York, and I was helping him paint. I was just helping my buddy out, kind of trying to serve him and be sober. And it came to me while I was with him, got like, it was that same nudge. It was like, but it was stronger this time. It's like, hey, listen, you are a free spirit. You don't need all these bougie things. You don't keep up with the Joneses. You would be happy traveling in an RV or a bus. You should buy a school bus and convert it or something. Like basically that was the gist. It just flew into my head as I'm painting and sweeping. And I don't know how to describe it, Chuck. It was just like, you need to do this. And within a week, I had been looking at conversion videos. And then my parents were about to move to the Ozarks. So they had maybe a week left, and my dad was going to come with me and look at this bus. So before I went to go look at this bus, which was $10,000 for a Bluebird school bus that wasn't converted,
Jeez.
I called another friend and I said, hey, do you think your buddy with the farm would let me park a bus at his farm and convert it for the next couple of years? He says, I don't know. But that same friend, his dad already converted a Greyhound bus. He passed away, left it to his brother, and he's selling it. We were going to buy it. You should buy it. Like, that just happened within about a week and a half of going sober. Like, it's this way. I don't know how God speaks to everybody, but for me, it's like maybe I'm too dense. Maybe I need to see some sort of coincidence, like serendipitous, perception of what's going on to like wake me up and jolt me out of my slumber. I don't know.
You did mention that on the first episode that a lot of things happened to you that were just like, if it was sent by God, like those doors were just opening up like crazy, like it was wild, and just things would just fall on your lap, kind of thing.
But this one takes the cake, Chuck, because I went and I got the bus. I paid $10,000 cash for a fully converted 1975 Greyhound bus that had a washer, a dryer, a bathtub, a kitchen, everything. Like, how can you, like, that's, I don't know, man. I don't want to sound too over sensational, but like, that's a miracle to me.
Man,
it's massively like all God.
No.
That's all I can say.
I had a question before I forget for Andy over there, because we always hear stuff on the news, and we always hear stuff. Oh, things are a certain way in Australia, things are a certain way in England, and everyone's, especially during COVID, it was all hearsay at this point. But I'm wondering how it was like during just like that strong point of COVID for you over there, where in England or whatever specific state, or I'm not sure what they're called. Pardon my ignorance, But over here, obviously, we have states, and then we have our cities and counties, and I mean, a lot of our counties are very rebellious against these lockdowns. I mean, especially around here, they're pretty conservative. In between, like all of the liberal counties, there's a lot of conservative counties, and they were staying open. They're like, we don't care about those lockdowns. So like Riverside County was open. San Bernardino, half of it was open. San Bernardino County, Orange County was like pretty much open. So I would still go over there, go to restaurants, normal business. But other ones like LA County and different things like that, all closed and things like that. So I'm wondering, how did that look like for you over there? Exactly where you were during that time, and what did you do? Did you care? What was the vibe over there?
Well, Operation Lockstep is probably the best way of explaining it. Everybody just fell in line.
Really?
We're a little island. Obviously, Scotland, Wales, England, Ireland. But because we're so small, we've got the same kind of national news. Everybody just got the same kind of memo, the same kind of narrative. All the other alternative narratives were just removed. People fell in line really easily, very quickly. Fear worked pretty well.
Really?
Fear, deception, coercion. I'd say the first 3 months when it kicked off, I was kind of like everyone else, was thinking, okay, what's going on? This sounds really terrible. Lots of people dying, but I didn't realize it's propaganda. They were showing on the TV. They were showing pictures of Chinese people just falling down the streets and stuff. It was all fake. Right. We didn't know that, did we? So obviously, at first we were kind of scared. My sister worked for the NHS. She was a director in Wales, and so she was right on the kind of on the chalk face. And so I would get my updates from her. And as the more I got the updates from her, because I didn't really know, I wasn't really tuned in. I'd kind of went through separation and gone through divorce now. So at the time when it kicked off, and probably maybe 6 months into it, split with my ex. So I was all over the place. So I had to move out into a house with a bunch of guys. And here's the strange thing. One of the guys that I moved in with was the producer and the director, the producer of the global news for the BBC. His name's Kevin Coy. He'd been a foreign correspondent. He cut his teeth on 9/11, worked for CNN, and here he was in this house that I was living with in, and he became a good friend. Had all the gear in the house and everything because of COVID. So that was serendipitous in a way, because I kind of got a little eyesight on how the media worked, but. I don't know, I think there's so much went on. I'm trying to think. I don't know what to say. There's so much that happened. I lost my job because I refused to take the second booster. I took the first one foolishly, and I'm really surprised that I did it. I had nothing but disdain for myself once I did it.
Yeah.
It was like I was in a weak spot. I got all these excuses, and all my friends went, "Andy, what? You?" But I was part funded. My job. I worked for a mental health charity. I was horticultural. I worked for a horticultural project in the mental health area. So, and I was part funded by the NHS. And my boss came to me one day and says, "Oh, great news! You can have the vaccine." And I said, "I don't know anything about it. I haven't been tested. I'll leave it. Don't worry." And they went, "Oh, that's fine. You don't have to get it. You just won't get paid."
Wow. Jeez.
It's like, what? I just moved out into this kind of like, this house, this flat kind of thing. I freaked. I went and got it. And then within a week, I'd got buyer's remorse. It taught me a big lesson about myself. That fear is very powerful, and you can easily just reach out and grab something and pull it off, can't you?
Right.
And that's the nature of evil. It's taught me an awful lot about the nature of evil. As a Christian, I have all this theology about what evil is and stuff, but when you actually witness it and it bites you in the bum, it's really quite a wake-up call. But at least you know what it looks like in reality when it works out. That was it. Paul I don't know who New Testament talks about fiery darts, doesn't it? And you don't see where the fiery darts come from when it hits you. You just have to react to it.
Right.
But a lot of these fiery darts are like planned from a long distance off, and they've come from something. And so, a bit of research. And my friend said, "Andy, you need to know a bit of stuff." They sent me links. I was completely isolated. I mean, partly through my relationship with my ex, I was very isolated. It was a very bad situation, and I was just out of it. So the timing of that was pretty bad. But I am very happy about what it taught me about myself, and it's also taught me about the nature of the world and about the nature of evil. And also, it's taught me an awful lot more about what the gospel is, which is that what Jesus actually offers to make you more human than you are. That's what I notice in the Gospels. And this stuff that's coming down the pipe from all these, from the elite, is the opposite. It's about submitting. It's about being fearful. It's about being coerced, deceived, lied to. And God's good because he doesn't force your hand. He doesn't make you righteous. He doesn't make you virtuous. He wants you to be, but he leaves it with you and makes you autonomous. So God's about autonomy, freedom, and a relationship with him. But no, he doesn't use fear. He doesn't use carrots. He doesn't use sticks. So for me, the big takeaway from the whole last couple of years has been that I've noticed the two kingdoms. Whereas before they were just theological things. Right. Now they're like real things. Yeah. And I've met people who aren't even believers who've realized that's the difference between the two kingdoms. And I've met many people who've now become believers, not through evangelical preaching, not through church, not through... They've just come through because they've seen evil.
Right.
But it's good,
Right. And it's kind of crazy. It reminds you of Romans, right? Because it's like all things work together for good for those who believe in him. But also the thing is that God uses even those bad things and still is reaching out to people even in the midst of that madness. And so that's kind of cool, man. But that's crazy. I just only heard that it was worse in countries over there, and like Australia and different countries like England. I just didn't know the difference because I'm like, well, over here it's kind of bad for sure. Because I work for Coca-Cola, for example, and when I went onto the streets to go run my route, that's what scared me the most. I've never seen freeways in California empty. Like it was like watching a movie. I was like, this is very surreal. And because the 2-week lockdown was like pretty serious. And so when I saw that, and I was, they emailed us a permit, to be out in streets because we were considered emergency workers, because we can provide water and different things like that Coca-Cola provides. So we were out there helping all the panic buying and stuff like that. And for me, because I work in sales for Coca-Cola and all these routes, and since we distribute like Smart Water, Dasani, and different types of water, people were panic buying so much they were buying premium water for top dollar. Like they were buying it like by the thousands and thousands of cases just here in the county that I was living in. So for me, it was like financially lucrative because I make bonuses on that. So I was kind of joking around like, well, bring on the pandemics then, man. You know what I mean? But it also, as soon as I said that joking around, God's kind of like, yeah, that's how people with power would probably react, because they're like, look at all this money coming in. So let's cause all this chaos. Let's cause all this thing. And it's going to give us what we need in order to make some money. And that's really, you know, joking around what I said earlier with Sam. It was the biggest transfer of wealth in human history that continues to go. And that was all through these guys, through COVID. And meanwhile, the middle class eviscerated here in the United States. I mean, especially in California, because I was so happy that I got the position that I got. I'm considered to be an account manager, and that is a position you used to be able to make a living off of, but now even if you're making about $100,000 a year, it's not enough to live here in California. It's just not enough. You still can't buy a decent home. Most homes are almost $1 million where I live, and they're not nice. And they're not nice homes. They're before you used to talk about, oh, that's almost $1 million home, but it was a massive house with a lot of land and all kinds of stuff. All of that's gone. Most of where I live, it's cookie cutter homes. It's like there's this movie called Vivarium, and it reminds me of that, where it's just like copy paste cut. Nobody has real grass. And in the movie, reptilians are studying humans and cloning humans to make themselves look like more human-like. So I was kind of like, I feel like I'm in this world where it's just not even real, run by these creatures, the evil, you know. And like you said earlier, also, which reminded me is you see it out of fear. You know, you kind of like, I'm going to do this thing. And it reminded me of where it says in the Bible that even the elect can be. So if it's possible, even the elect might be fooled to do something that they're not supposed to be doing, you know, and in many ways, like just because they're afraid, they're in the midst of this. And I definitely learned a lot of lessons as well. I mean, I was pretty rebellious, but then I also did get sick. But I was speaking to Sam. One of the things that we talked about is it realized like I need to focus on my health for reals. Like I need to eat the right things. I need to work out. I need to get healthy, because the only reason it affected me as much as it did, it was because, you know, clinically I'm obese. Still clinically, I mean, that's the fact, and that's what the people that got affected the most were the ones that are suffering from diabetes, you know, that are morbidly obese and things like that. And so when you pay attention, all of those details started, you know, God started telling me, I'm like, hey, you need to focus on your health for sure. And you'll be able to survive a lot of the supposed mayhem that's coming. And so that's something that I've been working on. And in my opinion, it's part of escaping Babylon, because buying all this processed food and all this this GMO stuff, and you see it everywhere, and now they're introducing all the bugs into our meat and stuff like that. I just see it. I mean, I see this NWO situation really becoming a reality. It's no longer something I talked about on a podcast. It's like a thing for reals. Like it's here.
Yeah, it's interesting that same thing's happened to me. I've taken autonomy over my health. I'm not relying on some system anymore. I don't trust the GP trade anymore. The general practitioners. I just realised that they may as well be pharmacists. They just go to the certain page on the book, find the number, and to prescribe something. It's pharma and everything. And so instead of moaning about it, I've decided to kind of start investigating nutrition. And it makes you really happy when you start to realise kind of what you are meant to take control of. I suppose we're babies, modern people like us, because we've kind of lived off a baby, you know, I don't know, people thinking for us. Yeah. And so now I feel a lot healthier. I mean, I'll tell you a story. In 2017, I got sepsis, and I was out of here, probably. I was going to die because my leg was going to have to come off to save my life. But that really, when I did survive that, it really taught me something. So it kind of prepared me in a way for now. even though I fell at the hurdle of the first jab, but you know, I moved on. But what it did for me is it taught me not to fear things that I used to fear, because I thought, well, if I'm not here, if I'm dead, then I'm not here to fear these things in time and space. So why don't I just live and not fear these things? And that really affected me. And now I should have known that before. Should have known it from the gospel. Because Jesus says, you know, you died and you resurrected in me. But that's just doctrine. It's like I didn't know it, and I could have read it in a book, and it still wouldn't have hit me. I had to actually go through that process of literally thinking I'm going to die and coming home, Lord. So now I feel like I'm on just borrow. I know I've just had a second chance. I shouldn't kind of be here talking to you right now. It's like a bonus. So that has given me strength.
That's a really good point. Like the idea that in theory we would hear all these things as Christians and believers, but I think what we're really facing right now is we're actually having to live it out now. And it's not theory anymore. You know, we're not in the with the comfy pews with the air conditioning and the coffee and the comfy message from the speaker that's making us, you know, tickling our ears, you know. So we're having to actually go out and live what we believe now. And I can speak to that if you want to maybe start getting into some songs on that note. I've done a bunch of interviews lately, and I wouldn't mind starting off with a couple songs that I wrote that tie in with what we're talking about right now.
Sure, yeah. And I got your album pulled up here. Which one do you want me to play one off of this right here?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I would like the first song on the record to me is like my personal favorite, and that's why it's the first one. But before we talk about any of those songs that are like my favorite, I'm gonna get into some deep cuts here with you.
Okay.
Because I haven't gotten to talk about these with anybody.
Let's do it.
So when I was writing this record in 2015, I feel exactly what Andy's saying, is that I had this idea. I was listening to sermons and reading the Bible and inserting even little you know, Bible verses into things, right? You know, in some songs. And so there are two songs in particular I want to talk about on the record. And I guess the first one being this one is Love Against the Machine, which was the title of our original interview. And
as heavy as a ton of bricks falling from the 55th floor of a vacant skyscraper. Though hardly scraping skies, your scarring smile sinks in my soul. So terrifying. Towering above, you reach out both gloves, then the fingers round my neck, they show who's really in control. Not me, not me. But as I steal my last breath, kinda like you stole my innocence. I'm feeling nothing in my spirit but some peace and penitence. I'm free. Ooh.
That song, I used some Bible verses in that, but before I explain that, I want to tell the story of where the song came from. And so there are two verses in the song. The first verse pertains to the reason why I wrote the song, which is I was watching the news and there was an interview with a woman, and they followed the woman. She had been a rape victim, and the man who raped her was behind bars. She went in to the prison to forgive him in person. And I thought to myself, that is some radical love that I feel like I can't really wrap my brain around, like having to forgive those people, not only forgive them, but like choose to love them. Maybe you can't necessarily trust them ever again, but you can at least say, hey, I forgive you. And I'm choosing to love you, even though you have done these hateful things and hurtful things. So this idea in the first verse is it's coming from that. I'm kind of assuming the role of the woman in those lyrics. And then in the second verse, I walk you through Christ and this wooden plank digging into his shoulder and people spitting on him. And the idea was to write a song where, I'm sure you're familiar with CeeLo Green,
Yeah.
Gnarls Barkley,
Yeah.
Goody Mob. He had a song called "F You," right, for a while there.
Oh,
And
okay.
I think the radio edit was "Forget You," but
Yeah.
the album edit was "F You," it's a funny song. It's good, but I just kind of wanted to flip that upside down, just like I did with Rage Against the Machine. And so this song, the chorus is just "Bless You," but I'm going to say "Bless You" anyway, regardless of the hatred and regardless. So I'm sitting here and I'm inserting like Luke 23:34 into it. And then I'm forced to live it. Like within a probably less than a year, I had lost my marriage, I lost my career, and I had to actually implement this idea of loving one's enemy and forgiving them real time, and it's like God was saying to me, "Oh, you want to write about it? Cool. Now you get to live it." It's like boots on the ground. Let's go, buddy.
Yeah.
And so that's that song. There was one more song just like that. And
Well, can I expand on that song a little bit? Do you mind? I don't know if you might agree with me, but I want to just, it reminded me of your album cover right now, because you're talking about, also, we can expand that message, love against the machine with our current situation,
absolutely. And I did want to say this while I'm thinking about it. I want to just kind of give a shout out to a friend who passed away, named Natalina from Beyond Extraordinary or Extraordinary Intelligence podcast. For a while, she was married to a buddy of mine, and she was supposed to sing backups on that song, and it never worked out. But she left me with this quote, and I want to share it before we dig a little deeper into the song. But she said she was really into Francis Schaeffer, and this is when I was doing Hallelujah. And I believe she said this on the podcast, but she quoted him, and she said, basically, Francis Schaeffer said this about us as Christians. She said, "The Christian is the really free person. He's free to have imagination. The Christian is the one whose imagination should fly beyond the stars." And I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like that's so true. And I guess I was being led before this back into the arts for a reason. And I want to reach out to my fellow, even the listeners that are on your show right now, just people, feel free to email me if you want to be creative, or if you're trying to do something. I want to continue to make thought-provoking art, like my buddy Andy here. Like we're artists, we just live it, And so if there's more people, feel free to reach out. But I dedicated the record on the back of the vinyl. It says, "In loving memory of Natalie Howdeshow." So, but as we go forward, there's another song in the realm of Love Against the Machine. I don't know if you wanted to dig into anything particular on that song before I get into the next song that is on the same wavelength.
No, what I'm saying is that, yeah, your messages are personal, but in many ways the message can be expanded into our lives. And I think it's important to bring up, because you brought up your album cover about the political dichotomy, and there's so much going on with like the war in Israel and things like that, where if you're not on one side, you're on the other. And it's like very forceful, especially even in supposedly red-pilled woke conservative pages that are in sort of the world of conspiracy, sort of. But they're like, no, you have to support one side or another. And it really it's just like pushing this war machine versus more, instead of like showing like, hey, we got to be working on something different here, because war is never good. No women and children from anywhere needs to be dying, period. Or people in general, not just men, not even men. But what my point is there's a lot of, in my opinion, propaganda going on to really force you to look at this in only one certain way. And if not, then there's kind of rage involved, and I don't like that. It never sat well with me, and it just, like you said, you mentioned that with your album cover and what we talked about in the last episode. It's just a fair reminder, man. We can't be, especially moving forward, calling ourselves Christians, and blindly supporting some sort of thing and saying this is what we have to do, and then doing it with anger or hate, and then just disguising it as as a Christian duty that we must be doing. I'm like, you are called to Christian duty, but you gotta make sure that the thing that you are doing is biblical, not just Christian nationalism, and that's pretty dangerous,
Well, I don't really see on either side. This is really sad to me, especially, speaking of our Christian brothers and sisters, I don't see a whole lot of anti-war
right
movement going on. And that's where I would consider myself more falling into, especially when you understand the whole system as it is, with that both sides of every major war for over 200 years have been funded by the same banks on both sides. So when you understand that, you start to go, wow, like I respect my grandfather. He was a POW in World War II, right? He went through some stuff. But at the same time, I'm deeply saddened that my family and other people's family are being used in this evil system. Right. Hate just begets hate. And
we're getting played. Come on, how old are we now? How many times have we seen the same bus come around?
Right.
We've got to get savvy. We get triggered. We get sucked into narratives.
Right.
Virtue signaling. We know we're Christians, so we've got to look good. No, forget it. We're even getting played if we're thinking we're against war. Even that, you've been sucked into that particular thing. Because these things are planned.
Yeah.
These events are planned. We know that now. They have it planned years in advance.
Oh, yeah.
And so when we're always reacting, we're being played. And when we're on the reaction, then we're all part of the system. So
right.
I think there's some truth in the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, where it says, like, you shouldn't concern yourself with things that you have no effect on. You should, you only have your life, right? And you've got to do what you can do to affect whatever it is in your immediate circle or whatever it is. So if you get deplatformed or something, you can no longer affect that world. So you have to kind of think, well, what can I affect? It might even be that you affect your immediate family, or it might be, I don't know what it is. We have to work that out, to grow up and work out what it is. But if we're reacting to all these memes and things, we need to stop and think. I've totally changed. Like, for pretty much 30 years of my life as a believer, I've followed all these things. I've written songs about these things. I've been triggered. I felt I had to support a certain football team called Israel because I was premillennial, So there I am talking about Jesus, and the next word saying, I support Israel. And suddenly people leave the room. Something's wrong. I've got to change I've got to work out what I'm doing wrong. And I have. I mean, I'll tell you a story. I've become preterist now. And that's not very popular in any circle anymore. So I've got no mates. But, but that makes every bit of sense to me.
Yeah.
And so once the premillennial stuff's off the table, I'm free to relook at everything in context again.
Right.
And actually start to work out really what the gospel is and what God actually wants. And that's really dynamically changed my worldview, my understanding of atonement and the gospel. And I'd say pretty much I can stand outside it all now and see it for what it is. People might think I've left the faith. No, I've gone deeper. I've gone deeper and deeper. I've done really deep searches into the scriptures and everything. And I've come away with a really simple answer. You just believe in Jesus. That's it.
Yeah.
And you realize that what he wants is for you to grow as a person into the person he sees you being. So it's not time to sit waiting around for the rapture or waiting around for something to happen and supporting a certain team. This is about growing in him and being what he originally wanted. And this has affected me. I mean, with horror that I look back to see what kind of plaque was building up in my theology. And it hasn't done me any good. It hasn't been very healthy. I'm sure that, God's used things, and I've had a relationship with God, but it's totally dynamically changed. This is why Jesus was able to say on the cross, "Forgive them, Father, if they don't know what they're doing," because they didn't know what they were doing. Jesus is trying to wean us off this physical world. He's trying to wean off the woman at the well, off the physical world. He says, I'll give you eternal life. I've got everlasting water. She actually asks for a bucket of this stuff. She's still not getting it. And so much of us as Christian, we're touching this and thinking of temples and geography and politics and economics, right? And Jesus' kingdom is different. It's more real than that. That's real,
right?
But it ain't real. It's not as real. So And this is what's happened in the last couple of years with me. It's coincided with the COVID thing. So much stuff that I was grey and cloudy has now become so clear. And I'm really excited about the future now, going ahead. However, that could be 5 minutes, could be 2 weeks, could be 20 years.
Right.
Because now it's like, instead of getting drawn in by all this, triggered by all these things, it'll be something after Israel, it'll be some other problem, it'll be climate change, it'll be something else. And we can all get cross and can we're being played because we're reacting and feeling we have to we're going to make a real difference by having a voice on it. I think it's time to get autonomous. It's time to start just because otherwise you're going to get ill. You're going to wake up in the morning, hear the latest bad news. Your stomach's going to be turning. They do it the next day and the next day. Do that for week after week, month after month, year after year, and you'll die early. But you might have been right, felt you were right about something. I'm convinced. I'm so excited. I keep meeting people who just recently become believers in God, and they haven't got all this baggage and all this theology and all these different models, and they're just realised that God's great, and these bastards who are trying to rule the world worship Satan.
Yeah,
and it's like they can see it, and
yeah, it's pretty obvious now. I mean, they just pretty much out and say it now.
Good. That's so good.
Right.
That's so good. So to escape Babylon is to escape a mindset.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a place. I mean, I mean, we use the word for all sorts of things. You can do it. It's a good word to use, but really, it's a mindset. And I've escaped it. I think God's dragged me out, and it's been a total shredding experience. I've lost so much, but I've been freed.
Isn't it? I might get it wrong, but I think his name was Viktor Frankl or something like that. He was a Holocaust survivor. Have you heard that name before, Chip?
That sounds familiar, yeah, but I couldn't tell you where it's from. So
he was a Holocaust survivor, and he said this. He said, "Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." Like, that is mind-boggling to me. You know what I mean? That's just biblical stuff right there. That's our mindset. Yeah. And what you just said earlier, before Andy started talking, Andy said it. He was talking about this, why Jesus could be on the cross and say, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." Right. Well, my record, the first song on the record is called "Destroying the Eye." And it opens with me singing that exact thing. Right. And which brings me back to that point of, here I am holding on to Christ, or what I thought, was my walk at the time. I thought I was so deep. And then I had to go through this huge experience. Right. I was just saying last night, we were hanging out with the rabbi, and I said to the rabbi, he asked me how my bus was doing. By the way, my bus is in the shop right now. And I'm kind of homeless, but I'm staying with some family for a couple of weeks while it's being fixed. And everything is like clockwork for me. It's just been that way. It's like I tried to plan ahead, but my plans are constantly being adjusted. And so I'm always having to be incredibly adaptable. And it seems that God gifted me with that as a disposition. However, there are times when it gets to me a little bit old. Right. And I said kind of in a short way with the rabbi, I just can't have a normal life, And he said something very simple to me, and I'm going, I'm paraphrasing. This is not verbatim, but it was something like this. He's like, "Let me remind you of something you said once." He said, "There was a time when you gave your life to the Lord." He's like, "So you can't have a normal life." Oh, yeah. And that was profound to me last night hearing you say that. It was like, duh. Yeah, we can't have a normal life, can we? We're truly giving our life to the Lord.
Yeah, there's this kind of heavy band I listen to. They're called Sleeping Giant. It's like a Christian metalcore, And I still listen to that. I don't know why I got into it 12 years ago, and I, for some reason, cannot stop. I thought it was a phase. I was like, I'm sure I'll get over this, but I'm almost 40 now, and I still love it. I don't know why. Anyways, but there's a song called "The Cross is Suicide," and it's just a whole song about lyrics about like, dude, once you gave your life to Jesus, you done messed up, man. You committed suicide to that life that you had before, and And every time it comes back, it's going to end. It isn't going to end well for you on purpose, so that you can learn that is no longer you. That you're gone, bro. You're now in a different world, and it's never going to be, quote unquote, normal. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, Destroying the Eye, really the way the album kicks off with that. I thought it was a great way to start it off from the spiritual tip, right? With the Lord, with probably the most powerful phrase I've ever heard, you know?
Yep.
However, I didn't realize that I was going to end up, be writing about all these things that I would have to live through. And one of the other songs on the record is called Grave Spit.
You can spit on my grave if you wanna, but it won't bring me back for a second attack. You can say I'm insane if you wanna, but it won't do much good to help you sleep at night. And you can do what you want, cause you're gonna, but it will eat your soul to hate who ain't alive. So go and spit on my grave if you wanna, but it won't bring me back for a second attack.
I think there was a movie called like Spit on My Grave or something. It was like a horror movie or something I'd seen. I saw the DVD somewhere, and I was thinking to myself, I just tentatively named the song Grave Spit, like spitting in one's grave. What does that mean? And as I pondered it more, I was thinking, oh yeah, like there was this story of a man. My first Hallelujah episode was an episode specifically on bitterness. And I was listening to a guy's sermon, and he talked about a guy who was a prisoner, and there was a pastor that came in to talk with him, to witness to him, right? And the guy was, not really receptive to God, and he's like, well, I'm just, there's one thing I can't let go of, like I'm still mad at this person for what they did to me and whatnot. And I forget who the person was in relation to, but ultimately the pastor asked him, okay, well, like, is there a way you can write him a letter, and like explain at least, and just like try to forgive them in some way and get that across to them? And he said, I can't, because I killed them. That's why I'm here. And the fact that the gentleman had killed somebody who he was bitter with, and the bitterness just went on and on and on after this person was no longer even breathing, it's got so real to me. So I wrote this song called Grave Spit. And in the song, I reference a couple different things. I use Isaiah 5:20, and there's a line in there where it says, pardon me for a second while I find it. Where is Isaiah here? I thought I had it pulled up. Oh, that's that one. Okay. Is it Isaiah? Sorry, Chuck.
No worries.
You're gonna have to edit me here.
You're good.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm sorry. It was John 15:18. That was the wrong song. I was wrong notes. John 15:18. If the world hates you, know that it has hated me before it hated you. I use that in the lyrics to that song. Woe to you who call evil good, And the song is essentially, you can spit on my grave if you wanna, but it won't bring me back for a second attack or for a counterattack. It's this idea that this person murdered me. I'm taking that person's story and assuming that role. It's like fiction, right? But it's kind of reality in a way. However, like I had said before, in regard to Love Against the Machine and the beginning lyrics to Destroying the Eye, this was very much a funeral of my old life, of the American dream, of the marriage, of the big house, of the great career, of family even that I had, worked for, that I don't even have a relationship with anymore. So in a way, it feels like I'm dead. And I've since, I know specifically that family member in particular is still bitter with me and my family over things that honestly are just in his head. So I don't know what else. Like, we punish ourselves. We have to escape Babylon. We have to free our minds.
No, I agree. And so, is there another song or another lyric that you said you had some verses, you already shared some of them, and you weren't able to share them on another show that you like to get through, that you're like, I got to say this, I got to make sure and tie this together?
That in particular, those are kind of deep cuts.
Okay.
That's, I think, where the album gets kind of experimental.
Okay.
After track, I don't know, after track 5, like 6 through like 9, no, 6 through 10 are kind of experimental songs. They're not as like poppy. They're still poppy in their own way, but they're just a little more experimental. And those were the songs that I was mainly talking about. Were specifically Gravespit is one of the wildest ones. But then there's a song called Wool on the record, and that was just the idea. I was writing from the perspective of a sheep. Was it a goat? Or as a goat that wants to be a sheep or something like that, or something like that. And basically like trying to be less stubborn, etc. Is this idea, like, God mold me, and I'm calling to God to like turn me into the sheep, to the shepherd, as opposed to the goat, separating us, and I think that is something that ask and ye shall receive, because again, it all ties in with my story. The last 12 years of my life, it's just been constantly being corrected. And, when I get off track, he brings me back. And a lot of times it's very painful, like, what's that? I think somebody, I don't know. I'm not a shepherd, but I've heard that painting of Jesus with the sheep on his shoulders, like, is he actually, like, a shepherd has to, when a sheep goes astray, he has to break its legs to so that it learns.
Oh gosh.
So I think God lets us break our own legs, I would say.
Yeah.
And kind of have to be carried back in a way. But
I mean, we see it might be a surprise to people, but I mean, God is who he is through Old Testament and New. I mean, he can decide to do what he wants, period. That's just where I'm at with my faith in God. I'm like, I'm not going to be surprised. Like, what? God? I wouldn't, it's hard for me to say God would never. I'm like, actually, God can do what he wants. You know what I mean? So, but I mean, when you read the Old Testament, there's times where, I mean, man, people make some horrible decisions and they get dragged through hell in order to finally learn. And we see that, I mean, even happening in the New Testament. It's just not, I don't know, to me, a foreign concept, but I guess it can be in America, maybe, because there's a lot of health and wealth still, sort of kind of doctrine, prosperity doctrine is still huge. The biggest churches in America are those kinds of churches, those that you're just, it tickles the ear. It's nice to hear motivational speeches, basically, but you're just saying Jesus at the end of it, and that's so unreal. And it's sad because I used to be part of organizations like that, and a lot of people in the services were also happy at church, but they're suffering at home. And life isn't changing, and we're like, hey, why isn't it changing? Am I not giving enough? Am I not giving enough tithing? Am I not maybe donating to the church more? Maybe your life becomes this thing where it's like, it's now your blessings are based on whether it's a works based blessings all of the time, and it keeps you on edge. It keeps you with anxiety, pretty much. And also where I was before, salvation was tentative. You can lose it on a whim. So like, I can lose it right now if I get angry. And you're like, how dare you be a pederast and drive away and get, be in an accident, and you lost your salvation for being too angry, losing your cool. I mean, it was like a wild environment that I grew up in when we became Christian, but all of these things I've learned now the hard way because life hit me hard. You know, my first relationship with my first, or I had my first daughter, or my only daughter still, but I'm having a kid on the way now. It didn't work out. You know, you pray all these things and it just didn't work out. And you're like, why, what's going on? Why did my life fall apart? A lot of career choices that I have, regrets on, and things like that. And it's a bunch of stuff that I feel like, at the time it was regrets. I don't call them regrets anymore. Now I know that everything that I've experienced some of those might have even been my decision and maybe not the best plan for me, but I learned from them. God taught me from those things. So I don't no longer walk around with the, what if I would have done this other thing or this other thing? And then that gives you like sadness and you're kind of depressed. You're depressed because like, what if? I don't live there anymore. I'm like, all right, well, it doesn't matter what if. Now it's here's where I am. Here's what I've learned. Let's move forward despite how old I am, you know. And I no longer think of those things because I wasted almost 20 years of my life in that cult that I was in. And all of that stuff was, when I left it, I had all of this burden and this depression of like, now I'm in my 20s at the time when I left. Late 20s, and I was like, what do I do? You know, and so now I've learned from all that stuff. Thank God for a lot of the Mike Davis stuff, the emotional intelligence stuff, you know. Dude,
he's my guy.
Because I mean, I've been so blessed by him. And when Andy earlier, when he said, you know, pretty much it's a standard that I teach my daughter all of the time to try and get in her head is like, you anything outside of your control, you obviously can't control that, but you can control how you feel about it. You can control your emotions about what is your surroundings. But you cannot, obviously control bigger picture things. It's impossible. Like God doesn't even do that when it comes to individuals making their own decisions. So what makes you think you can control someone's feelings or decisions or anything? It's a waste of time. So don't do that.
Yes.
So instead work on the things that you can definitely control, which is how you feel about it first. And then you're making decisions now from that emotional intelligence perspective instead of, you're a slave to your own emotions. Now you're in control. You know what I'm saying?
You let them serve you. Mm-hmm. You don't serve them.
Mm-hmm. Can I just share something?
Of course.
That's in line with what you said, because you said you had 20 years of being in that kind of cultic, in our, I call it okey-cokey Christianity, where you have a good day and a bad day. You feel like God's with you and he loves you, and the next day you feel wretched. And I think it comes from reading the Bible out of context.
Oh, yeah.
This is why I've found that Michael Heisser's, kind of context is king has really helped me. Enter Your Rights helped me. And also the idea of 70 AD being the big day of marriage to the church. I spent most of my life, and most Christians I know, think that we're engaged to Jesus and he's going to come and marry us. But Jesus did say very clearly he would come soon at the time. And I believe he came in 70 AD. That sounds really weird. I don't believe he came physically and flowed like Mary Poppins, but I believe that he came in judgment of the old system. The temple and the heavens and the earth went up in flames, and we now live in the age of Jesus, who's seated at the right hand of the Father, and we're married to him. So the dead and the living, as Paul says, will be caught up together with him. It doesn't mean literally flying into the sky and meeting Jesus in the sky. That's just terminology that explains that we are now one unit. But there was a tension in that 40-year period, I believe, contextually, where people could fall away and go back to the temple and start doing the daily sacrifices and reject the one sacrifice. We don't have that. So I think many of us read the scriptures out of context and we get into all sorts of problems, and we don't know our identity in Jesus now. Like you explained, people thought they could just fall away the next day because they sinned, because they read Hebrews completely wrong. They didn't realize the sin that easily besets in Hebrews means going back to the temple. They think it's just a sin they committed. They watch some porn and now they can't go to heaven, Right. It's not that kind of thing. If you get your theology wrong, you get your identity wrong. If you acknowledge now that by belief in Jesus, you are now a member of the divine council, you are royal, you have a band of witnesses who are your brothers and sisters, whether they're angels or humans, that you belong back as Adam and Eve used to, that Jesus has corrected that problem. Your identity, your core muscle spiritually is brilliant. And I fear, because I knew that I didn't have that, and many people don't, because they haven't read the Bible in context. They read it as if it's written to them instead of listening in on a telephone conversation. And I think this has been the great thing for me. I feel like I'm learning all over again. I feel like a child starting all over again. Yeah. It's such fun. But I know my identity now.
Yeah.
It's not based on my performance.
Right.
It's so good. And that, do you know what actually does? That just changes your performance, but in the organic, true way.
Right.
Because it's a loving relationship with God.
Because before I was like, it was, we were taught where I was, it's like, if you don't do actions, if your faith does not have works, you will lose your salvation. So you did works based on fear and not love for God.
Yeah.
And so you're just kind of moving. And I love that. I got to put it on a T-shirt. If you get your theology wrong, you get your identity wrong. I like that's an amazing statement. And it really opens, like you said. I mean, I've read Unseen Realm and most of Heiser's work, and definitely we recommend it all of the time, because knowing what it means to be made in the image of God, the context of that, gosh, man. I mean, if you knew that, then you're kind of like, it kind of alleviated my depression, to be honest, because I was like, wait a minute, I'm who in God's counsel? Like, what? Like, that's what he wants for us? And then it opens up the authority that Jesus spoke about that we have when he was in the Gospels, when he's talking about that stuff in the Gospels. And you're like, wait a minute, it sounds like we got a lot more power than we think, and we're not even tapping into it at all. We're just kind of like walking around, and then it's watered down and taught incorrectly in these health and wealth prosperity doctrines, where they almost tap on it properly, but then they just go way off into some other direction. It's like, no, that's not what it is. It's like a near miss, as they say. It's not it. And so context is incredibly important. And so yet another Babylon, another system we need to escape, right? So it's the Babylon of theology, you know what I mean? Yeah. And it just keeps you enslaved and never really real growth, and you're drinking milk for the rest of your life, and that's not a good place to be as a Christian. You want to get into those stakes,
I think if you really think, when Jesus was hanging on the cross, what did he die for? Was it what you see around, or what you think it is, or this gospel, strange gospel that perhaps is getting you all over the place? Or was it to get us back to what was lost in the garden? Mm-hmm. And I believe it was. And the method he used at the time was to deal with the idolatry of Israel. But it wasn't about Israel. It was about Israel and the rest of humanity. And that takes us back to the problem in the garden, the very first problem. So he's dealt with all the problems. There's nothing, no hangovers, there's no left in it. It's done. It's finished. This is the kind of thing that absolutely changes you, that and he loves you. It isn't just that he had to love you, he had to die. There's a works contract that we kind of read into teachings of the New Testament, into the Romans and stuff, which isn't, if you read it in context, isn't saying that as a Hebrew understanding. But we read this works contract. It's almost like God had to forgive us contractually because he's in a corner, because the algebra has to work that way. Well, you don't really feel like God loves you. You just feel like he had to love you. God loves you, and he's dealt with the issues, which are complicated. But he's done it. He's unpicked it all, And I just think it's important that we like God as well as love him. You can like your kids. Yeah. And you can love your kids, or sometimes you can love your kids and not like them, or have a friend and love them and not like them. But I like God because I've started reading the Bible in context. Mm-hmm. All that weird stuff in the Old Testament is in a context of a situation that's weird and crazy, and he's trying to work it out. He's working like baby steps, trying to bring people back to him, into relationship with him. If you read it understanding that's what's going on, God comes out of it shining. But if you don't, you're going to think he's mad. Yeah, you've got to get the context.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you hear back in the late 90s and early 2000s, that was like the thing, misquoting Joshua, God's megalonical, what's that word? Megamaniacal, crazy, all this stuff. And there's just so much, because they don't, and they don't know the context. And I think Unseen Realm is huge. Cosmic geography, seeing God work all of the issues out, all through the Old Testament, all of it. Like you're seeing, it's all one big story. And guess what? Right now, you're still part of that story that he has been working out. and it's doing quite well because it's God's plan. So he's sovereign, so he knows what he's doing, and you're in the midst of that plan, man. So be happy, be joyful, you know. And knowing this, of course, going back, I hate to beat a dead horse here, you're escaping Babylon, baby, you know. And so, Sam, any other song, anything else you want to get in there? I know you have another show coming, so I don't want to hold you too long.
Yeah, no, we have a little bit of time still.
Okay.
Wouldn't mind getting a little more into the record.
Of course. Do you want me to actually play a song here? Because I have it.
Well, I think.
Or do you want me to just play one in the middle?
You could, yeah.
Okay.
If I could ask you, you know, while you'll go back and you'll edit this.
Of course, yeah.
Can you just intersperse parts of songs into it? You know what I mean? Like when I reference like this verse, or when I referenced, you know, like those songs, like I've referenced like Hindsight 2020 so far, and Grave Spit, Love Against the Machine, and a little bit of Destroying the Eye, you know, just like little parts here and there.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that it would be.
Sorry.
That's all right.
I got to figure out how to silence this thing. Because I changed the cloud over to my phone. My computer's now on the same cloud as my phone, and so now I get all my phone calls here. I can't stand it.
Yeah. Well, I think I know where I want to pick the record up, because of our last interview.
Okay.
And it was, like I said, man, you were the only I think you're the first interview I did. You're the first Slave to Servant interview was Fire Theft. I mean, I never had come out and talked about that, you know, it was 2019 that I felt that urge to pull the trigger and make this record. And, not to beat a dead horse here, because I know that we covered a lot of that in that first episode, so you have to go back if you want to hear more about that.
Definitely.
But point being is that like I was saying, this album has like a split personality, because I think that like while I've mentioned a lot of the spiritual songs on it, and there are more, I went back and I had to write songs about what I was going through during all this. And the record starts off so socio-conscious, and then breaks into a divorce song, and then breaks into an overcoming song that I mentioned, and then breaks into more of the spirituality part of it in the middle of the record. Like for all of those songs, very spiritual, very socio-spiritual, socio-political, conscious, whatever you want to call it. And then after Love Against the Machine, it takes a little break for a couple more songs and comes back to my personal life. And there's a song that I wrote called The Things You Know I Never Knew. And the reason I want to talk about this one and the next song are because I know I went in depth of those two songs with you, but nobody had an audio recording of that. And I'm not saying you got to play this one, but this is the song that makes the record, I guess, a little questionable to our quote unquote Christian audience, because this is the one that I dropped 2 F-bombs in.
Ooh.
And I know I explained that to you, but this song is called The Things You Know I Never Knew. And when I initially was writing it, I was going through the separation, when it was more like, I have to let go of the things that I'm never going to know that you're doing behind my back. And it was a really hard lesson. On top of that, I was screaming at God for it. You know, and this song is very much the most emotionally violent song on the record. Me taking that statement, the things you know I never knew, and really coming back to God and being like, well, you knew all this was going to unfold. And like, I think back to 2011, when I pulled in here and looked at the beautiful stars in the sky at night, as opposed to, you know, being in upstate New York versus being, you know, in Chicago most of my whole life, you know, looking up at the stars, if I had even got a tinge of what I was about to go through, I think I would have turned back around and went back to Chicago, you know. But God knew I was going to endure all this. God knew it was going to shape me and mold me. And so to me, it took on a whole new meaning. But in the song, I use a metaphor in the song for a house that's burning down, which is the house that I was living next door to. Figuratively speaking, it burned down. Our family ceased to exist for what it was, the 4 of us, and became, for me, 3 of us. And while we're still a family in the sense of still, you know, we created life and we co-parent together, I talk about in the song and I'm not trying to justify for anybody that is, staunchly against the F word or other language, but I just didn't know how else to convey it, because I was in a pretty hot spot there.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I say in the song is I went back in like, I'm using the house as the metaphor here, like being on fire, like almost like I'm a fireman. I went back in for the last of what I had. Most got burned up, but still not quite as effing sad as the lifelong scars we left on our two innocent babies.
Mm.
And this song was about my kids. And later finding out, dude, this was the song very much that allowed me to just get it out, get the bitterness and the hurt out, and forgive it, and go, you know what? I'm mad at you for breaking up my family. I'm mad at you for doing this to my kids. I'm okay, but I'm still holding a grudge because of my kids, because I wanted something different for them. So the things I never knew is probably, to me, the most personal and raw song I have on the record, as far as just the despair that I felt. However, the song that follows it, and we talked a little more in depth about it, is a song of redemption, is the song of true forgiveness. And it's the one that I wrote for my daughter on the record. And it's this idea that I'm going back to that house that had burned down and to pick up my daughter after things have cooled down, everything's okay. And here I am now raising you in the aftermath of this burned down family. And it's okay, because I'm gonna hold your hand through this. I'm gonna teach you how to love a man. I'm gonna teach she teaches me how to be loved by a woman. My daughter is one of the most amazing human beings I've ever met, and such a blessing to me. But Lucy May is a very personal song, and you can feel free to play that song if you want here. But after Lucy May comes the only song that I consider a true praise song on the record. And I think you played the acoustic version of this in the first interview we did years back. But this is the song that Andy got to be in the video with me for it and play guitar in it. And I don't know when it's going to come out, but this one's just, I don't know, this is a very special song, and this kind of started the whole project. And I think it would be quite appropriate for you to play this song at the very end.
Yeah, I'll play it. Are you talking about Yeshua?
Yeshua, yeah.
Yeah, I'll play it, but like the latest version. And
yeah, the one on Escape Bad when it's a loud version.
Yeah, I like the other one. I posted on the Instagram. I really do like it. I like I read through the lyrics. It was one of the first actually alternative, I guess, sounding song sort of that my daughter ever listened to,
Oh, cool.
because she was, at the time when it came out, she was smaller, and now she's 17, but I was already kind of introducing her to the rock world a little bit earlier in her preteens and teen years, but she really enjoyed it. And so I'll definitely put that one, the whole thing, as kind of like the in-between song before we head out. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I guess we've mostly honestly covered most of the record, but there's a song, and I thought this was, I mentioned this on Canary Cry Radio, but it really does resonate with me in regard to the fact that you and I talked first. And before all this COVID, before all this stuff happened. And the fact that I have a record of it, like that we were talking about these songs as I was about to mix them all. They were all done. And this is the last song on the album. It's called Birth Pangs. And the song ends like this. I say, the path to heaven is straight, but not so wide. Enlightenment don't stem from a third eye. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, sick infections, and mass injection. See no connections. Birth pangs. So that's how the record ends. And I just think it's wild to me that we went through COVID, right, as this is going on.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's not like I planned anything. It's not like, it's just, I feel like God God had alerted me to a lot of this stuff.
You're a prophet.
no, I mean, I'm just a vessel, you know, like, and it's not of me, you know, it's like, I'm just walking by faith over here. So I'm no special human being. And at the same time, I am very special. Right. So,
of course.
But that being said, the CD version, there's a bonus track. I have merch available. I guess this is the part where we do the plug, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I want to say to the listeners, I would highly appreciate it. Number one, go on slave2servant.com. That's my website. You can find all of my social medias. Follow the band on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, on whatever platform you use. It's just really appreciative. Most importantly, Spotify is a big one. If we can get the listener base up on Spotify, you can just stream the record for free on there. Just follow us. Hit the follow button on all these things. That's the thing that I can't stress enough. That helps us out the most. And if you want to go the extra mile, I have 12-inch vinyl, translucent 180-gram vinyl of the record. There were only 500 copies pressed. I have CDs that I had to make the CD a little bit, have a little extra value to it. So the CD actually has a bonus track, has a B-side that I cut from the record on all the digital and the vinyl versions. So it's got a song called Second Coming, which is kind of a, had to get a little UFO stuff in there, right? You know, just had to have one song, but it's on the CD version. It's called Second Coming. And then I have shirts. I think there are 4 different shirts in the web store. I also, in 2021, released all of the B-sides, all the stuff that was like pre-recording the record, all the acoustic versions and some covers and all kinds of stuff. It's got 16 songs on that one. It's called Singularity. That's a CD. You can also listen to that on Spotify and all the streaming platforms. I think I was just telling you earlier, there's 14 music videos out there out of those 16 tracks. Wow. And there are already 5 music videos. As of tomorrow, there will be 5 music videos for Escape Babylon up, because I'm releasing Destroying the Eye tomorrow. And that's quite a controversial video, which I look forward to hearing what you, Chuck, hear about that.
Okay.
I'd like to hear what you think about that one. But anyway, yeah, feel free to, if you want to support me in that way, it's super helpful to order something. But like I said, subscribing is the most beneficial thing. And then just sharing the stuff. Like, the other thing is just, if you like the Destroying the Eye video that I drop tomorrow, go watch it and go share it with everybody that you think like would like it. You know, please. This is a total grassroots movement. And Andy here, he flew. I just want to publicly thank him here. He flew all the way from the UK to play guitar for our first live performance in Camden, Tennessee at Self-Reliance Festival.
Nice,
so thank you.
That's great. No, it's an honor, mate. It's great music. It's a great album. Listen to it all the time.
So anyway, I would appreciate, anybody just subscribe, follow, like, share, do all that stuff. And if you want to go above and beyond, there's plenty in my web store at Slave2Servant. That's with a TWO is in the number 2. Slave2servant.com/store. Feel free to get some swag and I will mail it out to you, and I will add bonus gifts as I always do.
Nice.
So,
I'll put that link in the bio for sure. I'll put that link in the info in the show notes. Folks, hang with me. There's a little bit more after the song. We're playing Yeshua, the full track here, and then we will be right back.
And everything we breathe ain't the be-all and end-all. And maybe what we do don't do much without a clue. Our cluelessness won't clue us into faith. We're swimming in a world of lies we believe. We're drowning in the shallow and the deepness that goes deeper than the depths of our entire mind. Yeshua, Yeshua. every doubt. It takes a lot of guts to spill them out before you make a bright side. We wanna be genuine, but remain dim and fragile. Lance, stretching science, wrecking everything he designed, even conquering times. No match for grace that comes when undeserved. Lord of all life, Yeshua, Yeshua. The heavens reply, Yeshua, Yeshua. Hallowed be thine, Yeshua, Yeshua. Creator divine, Yeshua, Lord of all life, Yeshua, Yeshua. Lord of all life, Yeshua, Yeshua. The heavens reply, Yeshua, Yeshua. Hallowed be thine, Yeshua, Yeshua. Creator divine,
All right, folks, welcome back. Welcome back. And now to fully land this plane. Andy, I would love to have you back and talk to you. I know you're going to head back to the UK, and maybe when you get nice and settled, I can send you a link and we can have a conversation. I'd like to know about you. You know, who is this Andy Jennings? You know, like really just get to know him, and you know, probably maybe some testimonies, whatever you would like to share. Of course, you also have music. If people don't know, Dissident Prophet, and it's music that I've used on the show before. I did a transhuman episode, or sort of a transhuman episode with Basil Rosewater many years ago. And in that show, I used your song, so because it was a very appropriate song, so that I felt fit the show. And I forgot what other song I used. I should have pulled it up. But Andy, is that something we can do? You think so?
Yeah, I'd love to, man. That'd be great. I'll give you a heads up. I've also got the nudge during pandemic to start like a disco band, disco funk band called the Defo. We're an 11-piece collective.
Wow.
I just started writing disco funk, like mainly 70s disco funk music.
Yeah.
I just immersed myself in all that, and I learned to be funky. And, and that's really it. So I'm kind of like gone full circle now. Like I feel like 20 years ago, writing about what was coming was relevant. Now it's here. Any fool can look out the window and see what's happening.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, it is
So
a thing. Yeah.
I just feel like I've got a message of really good news now. I'm really happy. And
Oh,
it's a really happy message.
that's
Which is kind of how it goes, really. When it's all really going bad, actually, God's got really good news. And I'm
right.
seeing really good news. I'm seeing people wake up. I'm seeing people discover what it means to love God, and what
Yeah.
it means to see the difference. So,
That's
yeah, I'm kind of writing positive music.
yeah. No, we need more of that because in this world of getting red pilled, you get to the point where you're kind of black pilled. You know, there's all these
Yeah.
levels, and you're just kind of like bitter. Even as a Christian, I found myself like, dude, a lot of this truth stuff is way heavy, and just remembering that in the midst of all of that, God's still sovereign and He's working through that, and really keep sticking the mind to that and nothing else, and understanding like, hey, man, you're in this story, and guess what? At the end of the story, victory, victory, victory,
Yeah.
victory. No matter what it is, yeah. All this is a conspiracy to start an NWO. Yeah, this stuff is not good for you. Don't be taking those shots. Yeah, all of that stuff is true. Yeah, we're likely still talk about it here on Fire Theft. But if you've noticed, people that listen to our show, we never go too deep into any subject because, in my opinion, and we've said this before, it's harmful to have dinner with the Mad Hatter for too long. You know what I'm saying? That's what we like to say on the show, man. You're going to get lost. You're going to become just as mad as he is. And you got to leave. At one point, you got to leave. And so we always, kind of touch a subject. Yeah, we talk about the weird, but then we have good conversations with folks like yourselves and theological episodes that I think are more helpful. And actually, this is one of the most downloaded episodes we have is the Volume 2 of Emotional Intelligence with Dr. Michael Davis, and I'm very happy to see that because to me those are the most fundamentally important, where it made me shift a little bit in the direction where Fire Theft was going, where we still cover certain things, but I dropped a lot of projects because I'm like, dude, there is the podcast world is saturated now with this kind of stuff. It's like all over the place. And so we try to just kind of navigate somewhere in between. That's where we are. And it's okay if I pay the price of not being such an interesting podcast to some people, because people like that fear stuff. I mean, the fear bait is very popular. The real like, get into certain subjects if you want to get into deep. I'm sure I'll get a lot of subscribers and listeners, but that's not my thing, man. I just talk about it and then move on. And that's where I'm at. So, Sam, anything else before we land this plane? I just kind of wanted to get Andy's commitment on the record.
Yeah. Well, I gave you his email, so he's got your email, Andy. So now he can stalk you.
Yes, so, I'm going to ask him a bunch of questions about England because I don't know, like some Americans here, we have this sort of obsession with English culture. I don't know. At least I do. Like, and then there's this guy from another podcast called Subconscious Realms, and I was like excited about talking about like Guy Ritchie movies with him, and he's like, "Oh, those are trash. I don't like those." And I'm like, "Oh, come on, man. It's like the only like let's talk about some of these movies." But hey, whatever. I don't know. Do you like Guy Ritchie movies, Andy?
Do you know what? I'll be honest with you. I'm not really. I don't watch much these days.
Oh,
I'm just trying to create things.
Yeah, we're not consumers. We're producers.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I definitely consume some English media. Those I like the movies and shows sometimes, but mainly for the accents. But okay. So Sam, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's okay. I'll just on the topic of Andy here. I will be the first to say that his band, The Depot, as he calls it, you can find that on Instagram, Depot, DEPOT 888, right, on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to shoot him a little message or whatever. But Andy just recorded a few songs here in the States here. We did that with the Rabbi over the last couple of weeks. Nice. When we got back from our show, and there's a song that he wrote. It's just beautiful. It's called The Garden, right? Nice. Back in the House. And we just filmed a little video for it, and probably sometime in 2024 we'll drop a Andy Jennings single, like acoustic version of that. It's going to be really cool.
Ooh,
So
I'm excited. Yeah,
but,
I saw you post something
yeah.
about him being obsessed with funk, and I was like, oh, I want to hear it. And now that you're saying there's a whole like band and whole like thing involved, I'm pretty excited. So
yeah, there's a whole album. When I get back, I'm just going to start mixing it with the guys.
ooh, there we go.
But yeah, in regard, I just would like to again talk to the listener and just say thank you for sticking it out this whole episode. If you made it through and are listening to me right now, and if you are, I'm just looking for people that want to help out too, just in general with what I'm doing, which is trying to get this band to be a more full-time thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have, just feel free to go to the website, slavetoservant.com. You can contact me. You can look at tutorials. I'm looking for people that want to just fill in on guitar, bass, drums, and go do festivals, go do conferences, go do tours, etc. I don't know where God is going to take it. It may go not very far. It may go really far. I don't know, but it's only going to happen through a grassroots movement of people who care. And so feel free to reach out to me. And other thing I wanted to say is that I'm going to do another shameless plug, but since this is called Love Against the Machine, part 2, if you want, I got a Love Against the Machine t-shirt in the web store. Feel free to snag one of those. Yeah. I just restocked it. I think I got at least 100 of them. So plenty to go around. So, but yeah, Chuck, thank you for kind of waking me up. And as I posted my first single back in 2019, officially on Spotify, the Yeshua acoustic version, thank you for reaching out to me as I was starting to do this. And it's been a long time coming. Like I said, started writing that song in like 2012, 2013. Yeah. And here I am in wow, like 10 years later.
I'm excited that you finished what you said you were going to do, because that's not something I'm very good at. I got a lot of plans and I just don't follow through. And I've even said them on the show, but I'm like, all right, maybe I should do some of those things I said I was going to do. But no, that was exciting to see it all come through, man. I saw every step, all of that stuff that you were doing, the amount of work you were doing, recording those videos. It was wild. You sent me a lot of snippets of things, and I'm like, man, this guy's at it, and he's been at it for years. So it's definitely very awesome to see all of that just kind of come together at the end now. So
thank you. I look forward to discussing more as things develop. I'm working on a mixtape that I'm probably going to drop this coming year. That's going to be 33 tracks. Nice. Involves our buddies at Canary Cry Radio. It's going to be kind of interesting. See how that gets received, but also just writing a lot more new stuff. Like Andy, I'm kind of heading a little more into like where Andy's at, where his head's at, and I also am heading more where Mike Davis has been, and so the next record is going to be completely different whenever that comes to fruition. I would expect that it'll probably take another
another lockdown
to get it out of me, but yeah.
Election year's coming, so there'll probably be something. We'll see. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I'm going to send you a video of me playing the triangle. Hopefully I get, hopefully I can get enslaved to servant. Just bing. That's all I'm going to do. Anyways, I'm just kidding, man. I'm just kidding, of course. All right, folks. Well, you know where to find us, firetheftradio.com. You know where to complain to us at firetheftradio@gmail.com or Instagram and Facebook. You can definitely also subscribe on Spotify and listen to us there. That listener base has grown really quickly. It's become our second most downloaded platform now, other than iTunes directly. So thank you guys on Spotify for doing that. And I see why. I mean, it's easier to deal with in many ways. Also, I can start streaming all the video stuff over there that we're starting to do. We did a couple live episodes already. More of these live episodes coming soon. The real talk episodes from now moving forward, the ones where we talk about reels and TikToks, are going to be live so that you guys can see what we're looking at when we talk about a lot of the things that are in the modern scope of conversation, whether it's the new age, whether it's news, whether it's weird stuff like aliens or anything theological, even apologetics and things like that have basically been the gist of those real talks. So I encourage you guys to listen to those. Other than that, that's all we got for you folks. Thanks again for tuning in, and don't forget to spread the fire. Later, folks.